Hi everyone! Welcome back to another planetarium live stream. My name is Jessica. I am the director of the planetarium, and with me I have one of my students, Eli, and I will let him introduce himself.
Hi, my name is Eli. I'm a physics and astronomy student at UMD.
So tonight, since we are in a new month, we're going to do our monthly constellation story time, show you what's up in the night sky this month, some of the stories behind the constellations, and also give you tips and tricks to help you find them for yourself whenever you go out at night. If you have any questions throughout, leave them in the comments. Eli will be watching those and will let me know if anything comes up. So with that, let's get switched over to our constellations. So I am using, for anyone who hasn't seen one of our story times in the past, I'm using a program called Stellarium, which is a free planetarium software that lets you pretty much set any date, time, and location, and we'll show you what the sky looks like. So we are currently in Duluth at our current time, and so we can see over in the west the sun is starting to set. But we want to go into the nighttime, and so I am going to speed up the time a little bit. And as we do, the sun is going to set in the west, and then the stars are going to start popping out, and we will stop it right there. So we are currently at about 10 o'clock. You can see I've got the time down here in the bottom right. And so this is when, in the summer, it starts getting really dark here in Duluth. We know that we have very long summer days. And so we'll start off in the north with a pretty familiar grouping of stars that most people know about. And so we're going to look pretty high up in the sky, and we are going to find this group of 7 stars that is commonly known as the Big Dipper. So we have the handle and then the cup of the Dipper. Now, the Big Dipper is actually not a constellation. It's an asterism. It's a smaller grouping of stars within a larger constellation. And so our 7 stars of the Big Dipper are actually a part of a bigger constellation known as Ursa Major, or the Big Bear. And so to see the bear, we have to add on a few more stars. And so our handle here becomes our tail. Here's the back of the bear, up to his ears, nose, down his chest, front legs, belly, and back legs. And I'll go ahead and turn on the constellation lines so that you can see that a little bit clearer. So the tail.
Just really quick, we just got a comment. When was this recorded? And this is live, and the sky is accurate as you would see it tonight.
Yep. So yeah, now that we have the lines back on, you can hopefully more easily see the kind of tail and body, head, and legs of the bear. And so with our big bear, we have a companion for it. It's our little bear. And the trick to finding the little bear is to actually use the Big Dipper to help you. And so at the front of the cup of the Big Dipper, these front 2 stars are what we call the pointer stars. Because if you connect them in a line and follow that line, you will find this star. This is the North Star. And it sits at the end of the handle of the Little Dipper. And so here is the handle and then the cup of the Little Dipper. Now, when you're actually out at night, if you're not in a super dark spot, you're probably not going to see the entire Little Dipper, because the 7 stars that make it up are not as bright as those in the Big Dipper. And so usually you will be able to see the North Star Polaris and maybe these 2 stars at the end of the cup, but unless you're at a super dark place, you actually won't see the full Little Dipper. And so it's one that's difficult to find, and a lot of people aren't sure or think that it should be as easy as the Big Dipper, and it's usually not. But our Little Dipper here is also our little bear, and so we have a long tail, back legs, body, front legs, and head. Definitely looks more like a squirrel instead of a bear. And our big bear also has kind of a weirdly long tail, but there is a reason for this. So these two constellations of Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, the big bear and the little bear, are Greek constellations. And so the ancient Greeks are the one who made them up. And so the story starts off with the king of the Greek gods, Zeus. So he goes to Earth, which he's pretty fond of doing, and ends up making friends with a woman named Callisto. And they end up becoming really good friends, but his wife, Hera, gets jealous of Callisto because Zeus starts spending more time with her than with Hera. And so she decides to get revenge on Callisto by turning her into a bear. And then drags Zeus back up to Mount Olympus. Well, what they don't realize at the time is that Callisto actually has a son named Argus, and he was a pretty avid hunter. And so, his mom goes missing. She's been turned into a bear, but he doesn't know this. And so he's out in the woods one day, and he comes across this big, beautiful bear that turns out is his mom. But he doesn't know that. And so being a hunter, he pulls out his bow and arrow and goes to defend himself from the bear. But thankfully, Zeus was checking in on Callisto, seeing how she was doing in her new bear life, and saw what was about to happen. And decides to save the situation by turning Argus, the son, into a bear as well. And so now we've got two bears, and Zeus is feeling a little guilty, so he decides to try and make it up to them by putting them up in the sky where they can live together, up in the sky as stars and as bears. But in order to get them up there, he has to pick them up by their tails, swing them around, and fling them up into the sky. And so that process of being spun and flung is what ended up stretching out these bear tails. And so that's how he ended up getting these bears with such long tails up in the night sky. All right, now also in the north, we have...
really quick, again, sorry to interrupt. Same commenter asked how we're making it so easy to see. And then another commenter said that we're using Stellarium. That's correct. It's just a computer program you can download, free for everyone to use. And it makes it easier to pick out the night sky depending on your location. And this night sky that you're seeing here is as you would see it tonight at just about 10 p.m. And if you were to head just a little bit out of Duluth, you could pick out the stuff that we're talking about pretty easily.
Yep, absolutely. The very brightest stars you can see even in Duluth.
Yeah.
So like the brightest of the Big Dipper, the North Star, the next one we're about to see. But if you want to see even more of these, you need to head out just a little bit.
Yep.
And I think I might have forgotten to put the link to Stellarium in the description. Eli, would you be comfortable typing that as a comment?
Yeah, of course, no problem.
Awesome. So he will get you that link so that you can go and find this program for yourself. It's free and completely easy to use. All right, so the other constellation that I want to point out to you guys in the north is this big W right here. This W is known as Cassiopeia, and she is actually a queen. And so you kind of have to picture that she is sitting in her throne, and we're getting kind of a side view. And so here is her head, her back, upper legs, lower legs, and then big long feet. But this is our queen Cassiopeia, and this is a really good one to try and find because, like the Big Dipper, it's made up of some really bright stars, and so you can find it even in decently light polluted skies like Duluth. All right, let's go west. Let's make our way over to the west, and there are some other cool constellations and things to find in the west. Now what we're going to do is actually, again, use our Big Dipper up here to help us find our next set. So we've used the pointer stars at the front of the cup of the Big Dipper to help us find the North Star and the Little Bear. What we're now going to do is use the handle of the Big Dipper, and we're going to follow the arc of the handle to this bright star known as Arcturus. And so we are arc to Arcturus. So Arcturus is in the bright constellation of Bootes, the bear herder. Now, this is Bootes right here. I don't quite see how you get a man who herds the bears across the sky. I think it looks like an ice cream cone. So here we have the cone and then the scoop of ice cream. But this is a really good kind of point to say that a lot of people think that once they can have the constellations pointed out to them, that they will instantly recognize the shape that it's supposed to be. And as you can see with Bootes here, that is just not really the case. You have to have some pretty decent imagination with a lot of these constellations to kind of see what they're quote-unquote supposed to represent. But what I really like about this constellation is actually the brightest star in it, Arcturus, has a hilarious story associated with it from a Native American tribe. And to them, this star is known as Coyote's Eyeball. So Coyote is always this kind of mischievous troublemaker in a lot of Native American stories. And in this particular one, Coyote came across this group of pretty ladies that he wanted to try and impress. And he decides the way to impress them is to pluck out his eyeballs and start to juggle them. And of course, as he's getting their attention, he wants to keep impressing them, and so he starts throwing them higher and higher until he accidentally throws one of them a bit too high, and it ends up landing plop right here in the nighttime sky. And so this is Coyote's eyeball right there. Now we're actually going to use Arcturus to help us get to our next star and constellation. So remember, we used the handle of the Big Dipper here to arc to Arcturus. And now from Arcturus, we're going to spike to Spica. And so that's the kind of phrase to help you. You arc to Arcturus, and then you spike to Spica. So Spica is in the constellation of Virgo, the maiden. And I kind of picture that Spica is like her hand, and it's on her hip. And so here's kind of her body here. And then here's one arm, here's another arm, and then we have leg and leg. She's a pretty big constellation up in the sky. Leg, leg, body, arm kind of waving to us, and then the other arm with her hand on her hip, and then her head would be up here. So Virgo is actually, sorry, I hit the wrong button there. There we go. Virgo is named Persephone, who is the daughter of one of the Greek goddesses named Demeter. Demeter is the goddess of the harvest, and so she, among other things, also helps to control the weather. And Persephone was, I guess, both blessed and cursed with being incredibly beautiful. And I say cursed in that because of what ended up happening because of that. So she was out in a field picking flowers one day when the god of the underworld, Hades, came across her path, saw her, instantly fell in love with her, decided that he had to have her as his wife. And instead of being, normal and just trying to court her, he decides to kidnap her and drag her back down to the underworld with him. Well, her mother, Demeter, realizes that Persephone is missing and goes off searching and eventually finds her down in the underworld with Hades and starts this huge fight with Hades, obviously trying to get her daughter out of, his control. And Hades just wasn't giving it up. And so they end up fighting for days. And in this time, Persephone gets really hungry, and she decides to eat a couple pomegranate seeds. And it turns out that this was Hades' plan all along. And this may not seem significant to us, but to the Greeks, where you eat is your home. And so by eating those pomegranate seeds in the underworld, Persephone made the underworld her home. And so Hades was able to go, aha, She ate, she belongs here now, she has to stay here. Well, Demeter wasn't having any of it, and after some more arguing, she relents to a compromise. That Persephone will spend 6 months with her mother, and 6 months down in the underworld with Hades. And so for the 6 months of the year that we see Persephone up in the sky, that is when she's with her mother. And her mother is, of course, very happy about this. And since she controls the weather, we have really nice weather. And then for the other 6 months, when Persephone is with Hades down in the underworld, she is underneath the horizon where we can't see her. And since she's not with her mother, Demeter is, of course, very upset, and that is when we have bad weather. And so the story of Persephone and the constellation Virgo is how the Greeks explained the seasons at the time, which I always think is just a really fascinating story and a really fun way to kind of think about it. All right, so let's head back up to Arcturus and our kite slash bear herder slash ice cream cone, because right beside it, we can see this backward sea known as Corona Borealis, the northern crown. And so Corona Borealis is this bejeweled crown that was put up in the sky as a reminder. I'm forgetting the exact story that went about, but it was a king and queen that went through a lot of trouble, and this crown was put up. But the reason I'm showing it to you, even though I kind of have forgotten the story a little bit, is because using Corona Borealis is actually a good way to help you find the constellation of Hercules. And so to find the constellation of Hercules, what we want to do is actually use Corona Borealis and turn it into a spoon. And so to do that, we're actually going to add these two stars right here to become the handle for a spoon. Maybe it's a spoon to help us eat the ice cream of Boates. I don't know. But we do this because these two stars that we have added to the handle, or to make the handle of a spoon, are actually the two belt stars of Hercules. And so here is Hercules' body. And then we have an arm, a leg, and a leg. He's flailing around just a little bit, upside down there up in the sky. And so there is Hercules. All right, so let's make our way now a bit more to the east. We can see Jupiter and Saturn are starting to pop up here in the southeast. They're still pretty low in the sky at about 10, but if you go out a little bit later in the night, they'll be a lot higher in the sky. Jupiter is pretty easy to spot because it's going to be one of the brightest things that you see in the kind of south-ish area during the summer. And as we progress into the summer, they'll be up earlier and earlier in the evening as well. Over in the south, I forgot about this one, so I'm going to come back to this one real quick. We have Scorpius, the scorpion. And so it's kind of this like T shape that's on its side. And so here we have the kind of tail and body of the scorpion. His tail kind of goes underneath the horizon. We don't see the full thing. And then this is kind of his head and then his little claws coming up here. And so there is our scorpion. And the bright red star that you see in it is Antares. Now, the reason that this is really cool, and it's kind of hard to see right now because it's still a kind of bright sky, but this is actually the direction of the Milky Way, this kind of milky band that you see, kind of cloudy band in the sky, which is our galaxy. And so you're seeing the light from hundreds of thousands of stars that are just too far away to look like pinpoints. And so they kind of all blur together to create this cloudy band. But what's really interesting is in the summer, the portion of the Milky Way that we see towards the south is actually the direction straight into the center of our galaxy. And so you see a lot of kind of these cloud bands and cloudiness. And let me actually just, let's speed up time a little bit. Let's make it a little bit darker so that you can see what I'm talking about. There it comes. And so you can see now that bright red star, and Terry's there with Scorpion, and right by it is that beautiful Milky Way. And there's a lot of cool stuff to see in there as well. If you have a decent sized telescope, 6-inch telescope, there's a lot of really pretty nebulae, gas clouds, and clusters of stars that you can find looking in that direction, since we're looking right into the heart of our galaxy. All right. So over in the east, looking a little bit high up in the sky, kind of on either side of the band of the Milky Way, we can find 3 bright stars, which are known as the Summer Triangle. And so we have Vega, Deneb, and Altair. Each of these stars is in their own constellation. And so Vega is in the constellation of Lyra the Harp. And so we have kind of the harp body here, and then the strings would go this way. This is another good case for you don't always see what it's quote-unquote supposed to be. I know one of our student workers sees a butterfly here. And so here's kind of the body and then the wings of the butterfly. But my personal favorite is something that a visitor to the planetarium a few summers ago says that he sees, and it's a man doing squats. And so Vega is kind of his head, and here's the barbell, his body, and then his squatting legs. And I think it's hilarious, and it's my absolute favorite. That is all I see now. But this is supposed to be a harp. Down here in the bottom right, with Altair, we have the constellation of Aquila the Eagle. And so we have this kind of teardrop shape is the body of the eagle, and wings, and then claws or talons. And he's kind of a chunky eagle, but that's because he's feasting on dolphins. Here is Delphinus the dolphin, kind of right below our summer triangle. Now, Lyra and Aquila are in a story together. So Lyra was a harp owned by a man named Orpheus. And he was a very, very talented harp player. So talented that even the gods and goddesses would have him to their parties to play for them. Now, unfortunately, Orpheus's wife passes away, and he is, of course, very sad about this. And after a few weeks, we'll say, all of the ladies in his town decide that he has had enough time to grieve and he needs to pick a new wife and marry one of them. And so they all approach him and essentially propose. And it's, only been a few weeks and he just lost the love of his life. So yeah, no, he's not over it yet. So he turns them all down. Well, they get really upset about this and decide that the best way to handle it is to kill him. Yeah, it's not the best of results for poor Orpheus. So they end up killing him and throw his harp into a river. Well, the gods and goddesses find out about this and are heartbroken. And so Zeus sends Aquila the eagle to swoop down and fetch the harp out of the river. And he places both the harp and Aquila up into the sky. The harp to, of course, memorialize Orpheus and his beautiful harp playing, and Aquila for his part in helping retrieve it. And he's also involved in a few other stories. But then the last corner of our triangle is the star Deneb. And Deneb is at the end of the tail of Cygnus the swan. And so here is kind of the tail feathers. We have a wing, and a long swan neck. Cygnus is kind of flying through the Milky Way. Now, Cygnus' story is not a happy one, and we have heard mostly not happy stories. Unfortunately, most of the Greek constellations do have pretty sad stories involved with them. So instead, I'm going to tell you the story of the little bear that is told by the Shoshone Native American tribe. And so instead of seeing a swan here, they see a bear. And so we're going to have to kind of do a little bit of rearranging of what we just saw. So instead of a swan, here is the kind of nubby bear tail. Here is the bear's back.
Jessica?
Yeah.
Just not too long ago, we got a comment asking to zoom in, please. I don't know what we wanted to zoom in on, but I feel like there's nothing really cool to zoom in on. It gives basic information about the stars. Maybe you know better.
Yeah, so I can go back to the heart of the Milky Way that I was talking about. You can zoom in and really see some of these pretty nebulae that I was talking about.
Okay, cool.
So here's a couple of them here. Oops. So this is one of my favorites. This is the Trifid Nebula, which I really, really like. You got that pretty two-toned color to it. But yeah.
Oh, wow. Cool. Sorry, I didn't mean to throw off your flow. I was trying to find a good place to slip that in.
Yeah, you're good. All right. So let's go look at our bear again. So we have nubby bear tail, the kind of back of the bear. Here is his nose. It's kind of like he's got his head arched up, like he's kind of sniffing the Milky Way. And then here we have front legs, belly, and back legs. And so this is our little bear here. Now, our little bear was a curious little bear, and he decided to climb up to the tip top of a very, very tall snowy mountain. And he makes it all the way up there, and unfortunately he slips and he falls, and he starts rolling down the mountain. And the snow starts sticking to his fur and sticking to his fur, and he's rolling and rolling and rolling, and becomes this just giant snowball that is going so fast that he can't stop. And so once he reaches the bottom of the mountain, he keeps going and ends up rolling up another mountain, where he is then launched into the sky. And as he flies across the sky, he leaves this trail of snow behind him, which is the Milky Way, and he ends up splat up here in the nighttime sky. And I think it's just an adorable story. All right. And so with that, we are kind of back to the north. And so let's speed up time a little bit more so we can watch throughout the night. We see that all of the stars move across the sky except for our North Star. That's why it's so special, because it's always in the same place, and that's why it helps us to navigate. Up in the east, not long before sunset or sunrise, we can see Venus and Mars up in the early morning sky. We also have a comet, Neowise, that can be seen up in the early morning sky. Unfortunately, it is not in Stellarium right now, since it is a relatively new comet. But it can be found, I believe, in the northeast. Because I think it's in the north at about like 3 or 4 in the morning. It's pretty high up there. I still haven't had a chance to get out and see it, but yeah. And so we'll keep going, let the sun rise up in the east, and then we are back to daytime. All right. So let's switch it back over. So yeah, that is what we can find up in the sky tonight and for most of July. As I've mentioned, Stellarium is free, so you can download it for yourself. It's a really great tool to kind of help you learn the night sky and learn how to navigate it. But yeah.
There's also a browser version, which is what I linked in the comments.
Yeah. I believe they have a mobile phone version as well, but that one is not free. Okay. Which is why I don't typically mention it, because I don't like promoting paid things necessarily.
Yeah.
But yeah, so if you have any more questions, now is a great time to ask them. While we wait and see if there are any questions coming in, I just want to showcase our virtual summer camp that's going to be starting in about a week. Our summer camp, Exploring Alien Worlds, where we're going to take our campers on a virtual journey through the universe, learn about stars and planets, planets around other stars, how we find them, and then explore some of these and kind of think about the possibility of, could we live there? Could someone else live? Something else live there? That sort of thing. It's going to be really fun. We put a lot of work into these. So registration for this camp is still open until next Friday. There is a link in the video description if you're interested. And yeah, we're going to have a lot of fun with it. All right. Anything else come in?
Nope.
Nope. Alrighty. Well, in that case, we will wrap things up. So thank you everyone so much for joining us. As usual, if you would like to see any of the past live streams, you can find them on our YouTube channel or in the videos section of our Facebook page. Next week, we have a couple of great shows coming up. On Wednesday, Lindsay is going to be doing the history of spacecraft or space travel. Space travel? Space flights.
Space flight, I think.
Space flights, yeah. Where we are going to explore some of the women who had kind of really key roles in launching humans into space and helping us kind of further our exploration. And then on Saturday, we are doing Ask an Astronomer, where you can ask us whatever questions you have. We'll see if it turns into Stump an Astronomer, see if we can answer everything. But yeah, so that's what's coming up next week. I think that's it. That's all I can think of. So yeah, thanks for joining us. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and we will see you again. So bye, everyone.